I thought that if I was going to do this, that I had to really build a structure not unlike what one would see in a cathedral. 7-movement structure that really divides into 3 parts. The first 3 movements constitute part 1, and they all deal with destruction, war, and death. The first movement is all in Hebrew. Some very famous texts of Jeremiah. A psalm that speaks about how man is like the grass. And a blessing at the very end, which is the kind of blessing in Jewish tradition that is evoked after usually a very difficult trial. And the entire first movement ends with the soprano standing up for the very first time and singing in Farsi the words Ajab Sabri Khoda Darad, which means, look how patient God is. And we go from that movement to her singing the first of 3 Rumi poems in a wonderful English translation. It's the only one I know that works. And she is basically singing about the spirit leaving the body and how this is not something to fear or be viewed as a negative. She's talking about death as a transcendental experience and as an experience which is essentially that of the spirit coming home. In other words, she is teaching the chorus, okay, so you've bought into all this destruction. You've bought into all this annihilation. Just understand that that life does not end with the death of the body. It does only to the ego, but not to our essential spirits, our essential souls. The third movement is all in Arabic. And it talks about war in a kind of lusty, zestful way, as if it's a kind of source of life and vitality. And it's divided, this movement is divided into the men singing the first part and the women singing the second part. And the women sing of spring as a kind of metaphor of nature, involving the leaves being flags and the branches being spears, etc., etc. And again, it's using spring in a kind of a different way from our goal at the end of the piece. That's the first part. The middle part of the piece, the fourth movement, is a choice that's offered both the chorus and the listener between war and peace, between destruction and reconciliation. And it begins with the famous litany from Ecclesiastes, which ends with a time for war and a time for peace. And it goes, and this is all sung by the chorus in the beginning, and then the soprano stands up again and sings the Lord's Prayer. First in English, and then the last portion of it, which is, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory to the end of the universe, amen, is in Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke. That ends the middle section. The last 3 movements all deal with the promise of peace and reconciliation through forgiveness as the primary doorway. And the 5th movement combines Hebrew and Arabic together. The 6th movement is a parable involving a beggar, and the poet is relaying a dream about this beggar and how he or she realizes that she and the beggar are one and the same. The last movement of Toward a Season of Peace is really the goal of the entire work, and it is the longest of all the movements. And it begins with a Nowruz poem. And this poem, for the very first time, is sung by the chorus. It's the first time that the chorus is singing the Rumi in English, as if to say, we get it, along with the soprano. So they join together for the first time, singing the same text, singing from the same text in the same language. And then following that is a small section from the Song of Solomon, which translates roughly, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death. And following that, there is the final blessing from the Kaddish. And the Amen. And that's the piece.